If I asked you to tell me the most attractive height to be as a man, what would you guess? 6 foot? 6'2"? 6'5"? Maybe even 6'8"? Well, what if I were to tell you that surveys of women say 5'11"? Despite every TikTok you've ever seen saying
at least 6 foot.
When women were anonymously asked which height they found most attractive, they said 5'11". So is that really the answer? Is 5'11" really the most attractive height to be as a man? Well, consider this. According to Google's social survey, one of the most reliable surveys in the entire world, women say they have intercourse 55 times a year, using a condom approximately 16% of the time. This would add up to 1.1 billion condoms used across America each year, if women were telling the truth. But men, according to the same math on the same survey, say they use 1.6 billion condoms per year across America. By definition, they must be the same number. So who's lying? The answer? Both. The actual amount of condoms sold each year in America is 600 million. That was an excerpt from the book Everybody Lies by data scientist Seth Steven Davidowitz that, along with the rest of the book, proves that, well, everybody lies, even on anonymous surveys. Which brings us back to the main question. What is the most attractive height to be as a man? It's a little bit of a goofy question, but you can't tell me you've never been curious. I mean, you clicked on this video, didn't you? With height being such a measurable, specific number, and such a large driver of attractiveness in today's society, you can't help but be curious. What is the best height to be? And with surveys, and what people say in general, being all but useless from a data perspective, it made me even more curious. Is there a way we could actually find a single number most attractive height for men? And how would we do it? Well, I think I found a way. After more hours of research than I'd care to admit, I think I've found a way to calculate precisely the exact most attractive height to be as a man. And I think the answer might surprise you. The first place I looked is the first place I think most of you would look, outside of just asking people, which is online dating. Exploding in popularity over the course of the last decade, online dating gives us an insight into what people really want when they attempt to pick a partner. This is a chart displaying online dating success for the average man at each height. The chart is made relative to a 5'5" to 5'6" man here, so groups below this line perform worse than a 5'5" to 6 man, and groups above perform better. Down here are the really short guys, who objectively have it harder than everyone else. Over here are the average guys who, despite public perception, seem to be doing quite alright, and are honestly barely below the tall guys. And up here, our winners of online dating are the men in the 6'3" to 4 category, notably just edging out the 6'1" to 2 and 6'5" to 6 categories. I'm sure this isn't mind-blowing to anyone, but it's interesting to see. The best performing height on online dating are 4 to 5 inches taller than the 5'11" answer women said they desired most on surveys. Continuing on, the next thing I'm going to look at is speed dating, which is basically an event where you meet a bunch of members of your preferred sex before deciding who you'd like to see again. They actually ran a study on an event with over 5,000 participants to see how height affected the responses the participants received from potential partners. The study found that women's height preferences for men are relative to their own height, which I've discussed before on this channel. But here's the interesting part. The researchers figured out exactly how much taller women want their man to be on average. This is a chart displaying the positive response rates men received from women depending on how much taller or shorter than the woman they were. A man 6 inches shorter than a given woman has a 13% chance of getting a positive response from her. A man the same height as a woman has a 23% chance of receiving a positive response from her. And a man 6 inches taller than a given woman has a 32% chance of receiving a positive response from that woman. The height difference that had the most positive responses from women, though, was 25.1 centimeters, or 10 inches taller, with a 35% positive response rate. Meaning technically, the best height to be as a man is 10 inches taller than the girl you're talking to. Our goal isn't to find the best relative height though, it's to find the best height overall, and luckily, this study has us covered. This is a chart showing men's average positive response rate by height. Again, the short guys have it tougher than the average and taller guys, but honestly, it could be worse. They still had a 20-ish% positive response rate. Not bad. Average guys received about a 30% positive response rate, which is again surprisingly similar to the 35% tall men received, kind of throwing the whole 6 foot or it's over idea out the window. This is what we're looking for though. The optimal height in speed dating was found to be 6'4", which kind of makes sense when you think about it. 6'2" is 10 inches taller than the average female height, and it's slightly better to be slightly taller than optimal rather than slightly shorter. Okay, so we have some hard data to work with now, but there's one more thing I want to show you. This is girlpowerstrong.com, a site that reviews romance novels and gives women's relationship advice. But that's not why I'm mentioning them. I'm mentioning them because of this. An experiment they ran where they tracked the heights of male characters across 1,000 romance novels written since the year 2000. For those of you that don't know, romance novels are similar to the hub for women, representing more than 20% of US book sales. The women writing these novels are financially incentivized to make these novels as accurate as possible to female fantasies. And what this means for us is it gives us a direct line of sight into what women dream/fantasize about. And here is what they found. Of the 1,000 novels tracked, 267 listed a precise height, not just tall. And put into a chart, the 267 heights look like this. A bell curve centered around the average male romance novel character height of 6'3". The most common height was 6'2", exactly 10 inches taller than the average woman's height, lining up exactly with the speed dating study. 95% of the characters were 6 foot or taller, punching the survey data saying 5'11" right in the mouth. 79% of characters were in the 6 foot to 6'6" range, showing super tall men are in fact too tall for most women. But there were more characters over 6'8" than under 6 foot, showing they do have their niche. And that wraps up our data. 3 distinct sources that give women proper incentive to provide accurate information. And now, with our 3 sources, we can start to draw some conclusions. But first, I want to mention this. This video is in regards to American beauty standards, by far the largest percentage of my audience, and it's very likely it's not the same across the entire planet. The average height in the Netherlands is 3 inches taller than here, and the average height in the Philippines is 5 inches shorter, likely creating different ideal heights in both of those countries. And now, let's get to some conclusions. First, being short definitely puts you at a disadvantage, especially as you get below 5'5", but it isn't exactly over if you are. The data seems to say you'll receive about half as much attention as taller men, which isn't completely over or anything. Second, being average isn't that far off from being tall. You'd get maybe 20% more attention from women if you were tall, which really isn't that big a difference. Now, as far as optimal, anything in the 6'2" to 5" range seems to be basically the same. And being even more real, anything in the 5'11" to 6'8" range will be 95% as good as the optimal 6'2" to 5. But I'm sure you want to know exactly the best height anyway. So, if you average out the 3 results from our 3 sources, you get 6'3.5". Mathematically, the most attractive height to be as a man. In case you aren't 6'3.5", I have you covered. I created an article made up of 1-minute blurbs going over how your height will affect your dating life, and how to succeed in dating whether you're 5'5" or 6'5". There's a blurb for every single height, so click the first link in the description, and without putting in any information, it'll take you right to the article. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you over there.